Hello, everyone. This is Debra Richardson, and today I am putting the AP in Happy, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. This podcast will give a voice to accounts payable team members by talking about the growing reality of cyber attacks in their world and which vendor setup and vendor management techniques they can apply to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Need training? Visit the Vendor Process Training Center to enroll in your choice of weekly live and on-demand training sessions. Plus, get access to vendor setup form templates and reference tools that will help you and your team avoid fraud, fines, and bad vendor data. So sign up for a free account to get access to free training sessions, vendor process FAQs, and a resource library with information you need to manage your vendor master file. Visit training.debrarrichardson.com today. The link will be in the show notes. Get ready for a busy year end by building a checklist to avoid global payment fraud. Don't forget to download your free checklist template. Keep listening. Welcome to episode 365, Build Your Checklist to Avoid Global Payment Fraud at Busy Year End in 5 Steps. So today I have a webinar replay of building a checklist to avoid global payment fraud. And so I will put a link to the actual webinar recording where you could watch it, the video of the webinar recording, and download the handout, or just download the handout so that you can build your checklist. So here we go. I'm going to play it now. All right, welcome those of you that are joining. We have started it, but I'm going to wait until the top of the hour. We have just under a minute left, and we will go ahead and get started right at the start or the top of the hour. Give folks time to join who registered. And guess what? We are right at the top of the hour. Lots of information to share today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, thanks for attending today. This is the monthly webinar series where I always talk about something in 5 steps, how to build something in 5 steps. And so this month's webinar is Build Your Checklist to Avoid Global Fraud at Busy Year End in 5 steps. And today's webinar is sponsored by Finexio, who offers payments as a service that will enable you to eliminate handling paper checks, also reduce your manual processes, and really reduce the supplier exceptions that you have to deal with. More on them to come, but let's first take a look at the housekeeping items. And so today's session is being recorded. Note that if you want to come back and watch any, rewatch any part of this, you are welcome to do so, but there will be a different link. I have to, on this platform, have to create a different link in order to attach the handouts. And so tomorrow this time, watch for that new link for the recording if you would like to rewatch some of it, or just perhaps share it with other colleagues that you think would find this information useful. Next thing is you can submit your questions at any time. You can submit them in the question section, and we'll save those for the Q&A. I'll get through as many of them as I can.
and any that I can't get to or that really apply to Finexio, we'll follow up in email. And then lastly, don't forget to download the handouts. I think I have 4 today. Yes, I do. I have a PDF of this presentation. I also have a handout from Finexio, their AP payments as a service, so you can learn more about that. And then, of course, I do have the build your checklist to avoid payment fraud at year end. I have that checklist attached as a PDF. And then lastly, I have a customized fraud training, like a visual. If you are interested in more customized fraud training for your team, particularly at year end, but really at any time. All right, so that is it for the housekeeping items. And really quickly, and I always forget to say my name, I am Debra R. Richardson, and you may have heard of me before by my tagline, putting the AP in happy. I'm a certified fraud examiner, but I used to be an AP practitioner, and I had a team of 17. All we did was vendor setup and maintenance requests, and so we processed about 2,000 per month, and we also maintained 140,000 active vendors across 7 different ERPs. And as you can imagine, that is a lot of potential for fraud. And we did see a lot of fraud, particularly at year end, because the fraudsters knew that that was a time period where we had a lot of requests coming in, and they counted on us and you, right, to be distracted with the volume and the chaos that comes with that. Now, though, I work as a trainer, as a speaker, as a consultant to help you clean up your data, clean up your vendor processes, and pay the right vendor. And that's part of what today's training session or this webinar is on. So let's go ahead then and take a look at the agenda. Very simple for today, this 30-minute webinar. We're going to talk about 3 scams, and I might be preaching to the choir. You may have seen these, but 3 scams AI fraudsters are using at year end to target AP payments. And it's really 3 scams that the fraudsters are using at year end to target AP payments. And then we'll jump right into the 5 steps, building your checklist to avoid payment fraud at busy year end. And then we'll tackle any questions until it's time to drop off. So let's go ahead now and get started first, though, with the only poll question of the webinar. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. And so this is very simple. To answer, just identify the percentage of what percentage of your AP spend is currently made by check. Is it 0 to 25%? Is it up to 50%, 26 to 50%? Is it 51% to 75%? Or is it 76%? So go ahead and enter in the correct percentage for your organization. And we all know that some will say, right, you just can never get rid of checks. And we'll talk about why this is particularly interesting, especially at this time of year and with the current trend that we see with fraud. So I'm going to give probably about 10 more seconds to get everyone to vote. We've got about 78%, so hopefully we can get a little bit higher. All right, so we have 80% have voted, and I'm going to go ahead. Wow, 90%. Thanks, everyone. It's really good. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. But it looks like we have the highest is 0 to 25%, and then we have that's 50%, and then we have 40%. With 26 to 50%, and then 10% is 51 to 75%. That's a lot of checks. So let's talk about. Well, what's really good, I want to point out, there was no one with up to 100%, between 76% and 100%. So that's always good. But let's talk about fraud and why that really matters. because that is really right. One of the three scams that fraudsters are using at year end to target AP payments, and that is stealing checks. Now, if you take a look at this new scam alert that I posted, and I post new scam alerts all the time, if you take a look at this new scam alert, it might not be what you think, right? Because when we think of checks being stolen or any type of fraud, we always think of the fraudsters that are stealing checks, stealing the arrow keys, which are the keys that'll open up all of the blue mailboxes in a certain area, right? Or even the apartment mailboxes and getting those checks and whitewashing them and, right, opening up accounts in order to deposit those checks, right? But in this case, and that's still happening, but in this case, it's the postal workers that are stealing those checks. So when you think about some of the internal controls that we talk about, and you probably do, which is, right, save or keep your check safe until the postal carrier comes to get them, or drop them directly into the U.S. Post Office, right? So that the fraudsters will have a chance to steal them. Well, even if you do that, guess what? The fraudsters may be stealing maybe inside the U.S. Postal Service and stealing those checks, because postal workers are the new fraudsters. So that's one thing. So that's one scam. The next one is the fact that cyber criminals, right, are in real email accounts. Either they have been very successful with phishing and getting the username and password, right, the login credentials, in order to get into your vendors, maybe even your internal team members, maybe even your, right, actual email inbox, that actual email account. Either they're doing it that way, or we've been in so many breaches, right? They're just buying those login credentials from the deep web. Either way, they are in your vendor's email account, and they are sending, right, requests to change banking from those legitimate email accounts. And not only that, but they are using an historical email string to make it look that much more legitimate. So no more can you look at, or can you rely on the spoofed email address, right, having that eagle eye. It's not going to matter, because they're sending it from the vendor's actual email account. And so you're going to see a lot of that. And then the last thing that you're going to see, and we've all heard about it before, is the deep fakes, right? Either deep fake audio, or in this case, I've heard more of deep fake conferencing. We all heard about the one where $25.6 million was lost. I believe that was the year before last, right? 22, 23. But recently in June, there was another one, not widely spread, but it came out too, that there was a deepfake video conference that was used in order to add or deliver, right, updated banking information. And in this case, they lost HK 4 million, which is about a $500,000 or in US dollars. And so we've got stealing checks, we've got vendors or fraudsters in the actual vendor's email account sending what looks like legitimate emails to make changes. And then we also have AI deep fakes with video conferences. And so these are the types of things that they're going to be pushing as we get into year end, because again, they know that we're busy and want to make sure that they get in their fraud before year end. And so what you really want to do is make sure that you are protecting your vendors' payments, which is something that Finexio can definitely help you do just brief introduction here. Again, they can handle your paper checks, they can handle your manual processes, and also take away, right? Free up to 84% of your AP staff's time by taking away those handling those supplier exceptions, and that's especially critical at year end. And built into the AP, their AP payments as a service is fraud protection, such as account validation services, know your customers, even the OFAC sanction screening, and also AML compliance as well with transactions monitoring. So more to come with them on how to get in touch with them if you're interested in that service. All right, so now let's talk about the 5 steps to build your checklist to avoid global payment fraud at busy year end. Again, fraudsters really target this time of year because they know that we're busy and they try to slip that through. So let's talk about 5 steps. So the first steps, and if any of you guys have attended any of my webinars in the past talking about fraud, I talk about this all the time, but you have to know who it is you are communicating with, either via email or via phone. And if you think about it this way, right, when you contact your bank, they don't just start talking to you about whatever you call to talk about. They will ask you to identify yourself by answering 2 to 3 identifying questions. And you can build that to do the same thing with your vendors, but also with your internal team members too. If they're calling you on a platform that's not provided by your company and you can't verify who they are, like if they call from a cell phone. And so what I recommend is that you build that authentication reference matrix or reference template so that you include the items that you can ask them. For example, if someone is calling and reaching out, right, asking, how do I change my bank information? Ask them 2 to 3 identifying elements to make sure they are who they say they are. So me, I would ask them, well, can you provide an invoice number, not just any invoice number, but an invoice number from, I don't know, January 31st. You'll look up this in the system, see when a random invoice was, what the date was, and have them give you that invoice number. And that way, if they happen because they're in the vendor's email, right, to hap upon an invoice, they just can't authenticate with that. But then the second question would be, can you also verify the last 5 digits? And I say 5 today. I know I have 4 here, and that's fine too. But you do want to see if you can get a little bit more, because sometimes the fraudsters, because they're in the vendor's email, may have a bank statement, right? Depending on the vendor. So a lot of the bank statements truncate to the last 4 digits. And the same thing with 1099s, right? We can truncate, the IRS says we can truncate to the last 4 digits of the tax ID. So you want to ask for 5 digits. Ask them for the last 5 digits, right, of the existing bank account information or bank account number on file. And what studies have shown is that fraudsters will typically just hang up because they don't have that information and then go on to the next potential victim that's not asking those types of questions. And so if you want free training on this, there is a free training inside the 3-step vendor setup and maintenance process workshop. It goes over authentication of the requester, and you even get a free authentication reference template. So that's step 1. And one way that I can tell you that I've seen this work, which is really good because it came out in the press release, is that Bloomberg posted that the same thing happened to a worker at Ferrari. They got a call from who they thought was their or his CEO, right? And it sounded like him, so obviously it was a deep fake. But he asked one thing. He said, "I need to identify you." As a matter of fact, what he really said was, "I'm sorry, Benedetto, but I need to identify you first." You can do that with your leadership, with your vendors, with your internal team members that you know you need to verify, so you know who you're talking to. And so what happened is the fraudster just hung up. So if you want to read that, the links that are provided in this PDF are clickable when you download, that are provided in this presentation are clickable when you download the PDF. So make sure you do that. So it does work. All right, the next thing is you want to add authentication of the data. So let's say you successfully authenticated the vendor that wanted to change their banking. Now you're going to send them, right, your own vendor banking form, or let's say they wanted to make a change to an address, a remittance address, to reroute or redirect the vendor's check payment method. Because again, check fraud is increasing and they are after checks as well. And so what you want to do is you want to build in that authenticating data into your current into your forms, so that when you get those forms back, you can check the existing data on the vendor master file, on the vendor record, to make sure that that is the real vendor. But not only that, you just want to put in some obstacles from the internal for the potential fraudster, right? Because the fraudsters, right, will just look at this, and this could be too much information, right? Too many obstacles. They can just go on and might even abandon the request and go on to the next potential victim that will only accept, right, the banking on vendor letterhead or a voided check, right? Because both of those really can be forged. And so you want to have your own forms, and on those forms, you want to make sure you have authenticating data that you can then go and check against the existing data on the vendor record and make sure it's correct. So if you take a look, and I put these in here just as I have them. These are actually the templates that I use. But I have, for an example, on the vendor banking form, you can see that I have, if they are changing banking, not only do I want the new banking, but I want the existing banking that's on the vendor record, right? They should have that. And if they don't have that, then how did they get the new banking? Right? So make sure that you're managing that pushback, which you might get. Also, I included the contact information for the internal team member that they have a relationship with. And yes, they can go look that up on LinkedIn. However, they have no idea whether or not you're really going to contact that internal team member. And this can be really good for you anyway, especially if you're dealing with a vendor that's not a PO vendor and you don't have a buyer that you can reach out to. But if you take a look at all the information, and you can compare this to what you're currently using for your vendor banking form, or create it if you don't have one based on this visual. And you can do the same thing for a vendor setup form. I like to combine the IRS W-9 with a vendor setup form, because you get more information, and you can include a second page that requires existing information in order to update other information besides the banking, like if they want to update their email address or their tax ID, right? Have them provide you the existing information that's on file. And by the way, one other thing that the fraudsters are using to try to get away with fraud now, they know that you're going to make that confirmation call. So you know what they're doing? 2 weeks before they request the change in banking or check payment method, they're actually requesting a change in the communication information, the email address, the telephone number, so that when they do send that subsequent request, you're going to look in your vendor master file and you're going to call them. So make sure that you are putting obstacles in the way when they change banking information, when they change communication information, because you don't want to make it easy for them. All right, the next thing you can do, and yes, this is that confirmation call, is you're going to verify that the request is legitimate. But this time, you're going to use you're definitely going to make sure you use the information on the form or from an internal team member that you have on file. I'm sorry, or from an internal team member if you don't have anything on file. You're also going to develop confirmation scripts. scripts. And I say that even though I didn't provide any for you, I forgot to put it on here, but I do have last week, and it continues for the next 4 weeks. I do have a podcast called Putting the AP in Happy, where I am telling you what those confirmation scripts needs to, or what I recommend them to say in different scenarios, like bank changes or check remittance address changes when you didn't have banking on file already, right? Different scenarios. So make sure you check out my podcast, Putting the AP in Happy. You can listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts, and I think I have a link for it in an early or later slide. You're also going to enter that on a confirmation log, so you're going to keep track, right, of the confirmations, because the vendors usually don't pick up on the first ring, right? So you have to continue calling them. You need to track that so that if you're out, any team members that are backing you up know where to start from. And then management is also going to review that log to make sure that these requests are continuing to be followed up with, and also to make sure that there aren't any that have been pending for a while, because that could result in a failed payment or even a NACHA violation if you're sending information that the bank will change on your behalf, like the routing number, right? But they're not going to do that forever. If you keep sending the wrong stuff in the pay file, eventually you'll get contacted, or they'll report you to NACHA for a violation. And NACHA is the governing body over the US ACH network. So you do want to make sure that you're tracking that, and then also that management is reviewing when you make those phone calls to the vendors. So you're going to do that before the change, and once they confirm, you're going to go ahead and make the change. But guess what? After the change, you've got some more work to do too. You're going to go ahead and notify the vendor that a change has been made, the same way that if we make any changes on any of our online accounts, they'll email us, right, and tell us that a change has been made. And if we did not initiate it, then either contact them or change all our passwords. And so you're going to do the same thing with the vendor. Let them know a change has been made, that it may affect their payments, and give them your contact information. Hopefully, they will be able to contact you and let you know that they didn't make a change, if that's the case, even before you pull that into a pay file. But if you do pull that payment into the pay file and it goes off to the bank, or the checks are now generated, you're going to contact the vendor when you expect them to receive the payment. So 24 to 48 hours. If it's regular ACH, same day ACH, same day wire, or a regular ACH payment, or for check payments, you're going to contact them within 5 to 7 days, and you're going to verify the payment amount and the check number with the vendor to make sure they received it, especially for electronic payments, because banks have a very short window of when you can try to recover those funds, and you do not want to wait for the vendor to let you know or to miss the payment. That could be days, weeks, or months later. And even for checks, most banks have a 30-day window that if you don't let them know that there was something going on with that check that's fraudulent, you're just out of luck. Like if someone grabbed it, right, intercepted it, and was able to get the payment out. If you don't let the bank know within 30 days, then you're out of luck. Most banks have that policy in place. So you want to make sure that you're finding out whether or not that payment went to your legitimate vendor within a short period of time, and make sure you reconcile vendor statements, and then also that you process return checks immediately as well. That can be really pertinent or critical at this time of year, because if you got a bad address or bad addresses, you don't want to be sending out 1099s and having all of them come back either. So it's very critical that you process return checks so you can update those addresses. And then step 5, of course, is to implement your bank fraud protections. The first one is for checks with payee positive pay. Make sure, don't just say positive pay, make sure it's payee positive pay, because payee positive pay means that the bank will look at the payee name, the check number, and the check amount to make sure that it's valid before they pay it. But if you only have positive pay, they're only going to look at the check number and the check amount. And fraudsters will sometimes only change the payee name. So make sure you have that in place. And also ACH positive pay, you want to be able to review the ACHs that come in before they are paid. And that's usually at some point in time, right in the morning, they'll give you a cutoff. You also want to put on your accounts that do not have checks, right? The post no checks wording or a block so that fraudsters can't create checks, right, using your routing number and your bank account number and then submit those fraudulent checks. And then, of course, this has been a best practice forever. Daily bank reconciliation, so you can find that any fraud that may have occurred faster. And so these are the five steps. And I did want to just again bring up Finexio, who is the sponsor of this webinar. And here's how to get more information. You can go directly to finexio.com/shield. And just as a reminder, they do help to eliminate risk with their Finexio Shield. They enable security and they really unburden AP teams. So there is a handout with more information, and then make sure you reach out to them if you are interested. All right, here's how to connect with me. And I talked about the Putting the AP in Happy podcast. I do have a link directly to the podcast page, or you can listen wherever you listen to podcasts. It's also on my YouTube page or YouTube channel as well, where I try to post vendor master file tips of the week. So make sure you check out those if you're interested. And then finally, here is we've got about a couple minutes for questions. If you think of questions afterwards or you're watching this on demand, definitely make sure you reach out to me at Debra at DebraRRichardson.com, and I will reach out to you within 24 hours. Or if it's a question for Finexio or our sponsor today, I will forward it to them, and they will reach out to you via email as well. I only see one question, and it's about access to the recording. So yes, you will have access to the recording tomorrow at this same time. You will be sent a link, and as a reminder, it will be a new link. You'll re-register, but it'll allow you to not only watch the recording, but also download the handouts if you weren't able to download them here, or you just want to share it with someone that you think would find this content valuable. So I do want to have a last call for questions. It looks like we have about a minute left. Thanks, Greg, for that question. All right, so that is all we have for today. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. I want to thank everyone that attended. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for attending.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that, got some tips, and if you haven't already, make sure you go to the link in the show notes so that you can download that checklist and begin building it so that you can avoid payment fraud at year end, because we know that's when the fraudsters come out. And I will tell you, January is my busiest month because everybody in January discovers the fraud that happened in December. So don't let it happen to you. Make sure that you put these tips into place and that you also build that checklist. So thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the 365th episode of the Putting the AP in Happy podcast, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Don't forget to check the show notes for the links mentioned in the podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and writing a review of my podcast on the platform that you use to listen. Stay happy.